All right. So, the particulars about setting a product strategy is that, as with everything, products change as consumers change as well. Jag Chef, who's like one of the great marketing gurus of all time, says that marketing is context driven. And so as the context that consumers work within and marketers work within, marketing changes as well. The rules don't change, but marketing does, and especially the products as well at the same time. And so what you need to do when you're designing or understanding products is to basically understand the very roots of what a product is. And so it seems fairly obvious what a product is or might be. However, like with everything, there are deeper layers that need to be considered when we're designing strategies to achieve some form of success. So without further ado, let's basically go into the definition of what a product is. A product can be anything that is offered to a market to satisfy a need or a want. That includes physical goods, that includes services, experiences, events, persons, places, properties, organizations, ideas. All of those can be considered under the grand umbrella of what a product is. It is anything that we offer to the consumers to satisfy any need or any want that they themselves may have. And although the characteristics between what is considered to be a tangible and intangible and asset changes, this definition never will. It will be consistent. I've seen this definition now since, well, you've added a few things like experiences and servicescapes and those kind of things, but the basic definition is consistent since 1978. It's in. So having said that, what are the things that make them unique, or what are the components of a marketing offering that consider them to be attractive? Well, generally you're talking about three things, and these are three not necessarily diametrically opposed, but they all work together to be considered a balance. If you took industrial marketing way back when they had such a thing, you looked upon three things: quality, service, and price. All right? Quality, service, and price. And all of those are eclectic mixes. And in one form or another, no matter what product or service that you're selling, every one of these is a balance of each individual product. Now, having said that, one of the things that we have to realize, or if a product is basically there to satisfy a need or a want, we must consider that it's the need or want that is satisfied that makes a product acceptable. And so what we have to do is look at what's called the customer value hierarchy that actually determines what are the layers of a given product. So one of the things that Theodore Levitt said, which you read about in Marketing Myopia, one of the great statements that Theodore Levitt said is, when you go to a hardware store, do you really want to buy a 1/4-inch drill? And Theodore Levitt states that you don't go to the hardware store to buy a 1/4-inch drill, you go to the hardware store to buy a 1/4-inch hole. And it's important to understand the satisfaction of a need is the most important thing, and that is the thing in its most fundamental level, and what's called the core benefit. It is what the consumer is really buying. When you go to a hotel, the one thing that you're hopefully buying is rest and sleep. It basically comes down to that. And if you're looking for a party, you know, that's true, but probably have to find another hotel. So once you have the core benefit, now you talk about what the basic product is. And these are the basic expectations that a consumer has in the purchasing of this item. And so if I'm looking at a hotel room, the minimum characteristics, what we call the conformance quality, the things that we expect would be like a bed, bathroom, towels, desk, dresser, closet. Is there anything else that anyone demands when they go to a hotel now? Besides those things? Wi-Fi? Yes, yeah, clean, yeah, Wi-Fi. Yeah, I was about to say that. I remember I set up this when I set up my ISP 20 years ago, and I was talking to a hotel that was in the city I was in, and he was asking, hey, can I set up hotel as an extra expense for my guests? And I said, yes, with the expectation that eventually people are going to expect it and not necessarily pay for it. So he said, really? And I said, yep, that's probably how it's going to be. And sure enough, it comes down to what we consider to be a basic product. An expected product has to go in what you said, all right? The expectations are, I want a clean bed, I want fresh towels, I want a relative degree of quiet. These are the attributes and conditions that we consider minimum as an accepted standard. When we came back from Iceland, we'd gone 26 days. And the one question I had in my mind, and the biggest scare I had was, would my car start after 26 days? And would it have flat tires? You never know. And so I got in my car, the guy dropped me off right next to it, the bags, put them all in, you know, the tailgate lifted automatically, and man, I just ready to punch that button and just prayer starts up. Talk about glory. I felt so happy. The fourth is what's called the augmented product that exceeds customers' expectations. And this is where you start to see brand positioning come in. So along with the hotel, it's connected to a spa. You might have a swimming pool, but then you also might have a jacuzzi. The expectation is if the hotel is near an airport, you'll have courier service. The exceeding of that is limousine service. And the last level, the fifth level, is the potential product. And this is all of the possible augmentations. And this is where the future is. You know, the potential products are those places where we can hopefully exceed the expectations of where we are in the future. I was reading this thing, looking at these. I was trying to look it up for you because I wanted to show it to you in class today, of some of the possible future ways that we will look at in these cell phones. And I think certainly Samsung has come along in that way with its bendable. I mean, that's already been released. I also have seen cell phones that have no face whatsoever and no buttons. And I was trying to find that one because I was looking that up on Tech Radar today. And those potential products are very interesting because they are a fusion of design and future hope that consumers will find these things viable. Some things consumers love, others consumers just don't accept. BlackBerry is still alive. And the reason that BlackBerry as a corporation is still alive is it's still the #1 most secure operating system for mobile devices. And as long as they hold on to that, they're going to stay along forever, no matter how poorly they design the phone. So designed an actual BlackBerry, by the way, that looks exactly like a regular cell phone, did miserable. The reason why is that BlackBerry customers expect the QWERTY keyboard, and when it wasn't there, it wasn't exactly what they wanted. Okay. So the important thing to remember about all of this is that products are designed with customers in mind, that they fulfill and exceed the expectations of what customers want. So how do we classify products? In the broad range, there are 3 ways that we do it. Their durability, how long do they last? Are they consumed in a single session? Their tangibility. In other words, do they have a physical existence, or is this some form of personal satisfaction or one-time use? And then finally, how do we use the product? And one of the unique things, of course, is that many times products change in the ways that consumers use those products. So I'm going to throw a bunch of definitions at you, and I want you to kind of be able to keep up. This is the broad way that we go about classifying products. Now, within that, when we're talking about durability and tangibility, we're talking about durable goods, non-durable goods, and services. So what is the definition of a non-durable good? A non-durable good is any good that can be consumed in a single session or in a fixed number of sessions. When I buy a box of popcorn, I've got 4 bags of popcorn in it, and I'll use them up. That would be an example. Many times, especially if you look in my refrigerator, non-durable goods seem to last forever. You have to go through a great purging and then fill the refrigerator again. But they're supposed to be non-durable goods. Durable goods are goods that last beyond a single session, and the expectation is they have a lifespan. Washers, dryers, computers. Generally, these items have a sophistication and a requirement of education in terms of their use. That also is one of those ways in which we identify that. Of durable and non-durable goods, of course, non-durable goods can change the quickest because quite simply their life cycle is much, much faster. And so it is quite simple for you to take a Three Musketeers bar that has been traditionally with a white cover for practically forever and change it to an aluminum or a silver color, and you in essence change the definition of what that is. So that's an example, all right? Durable goods are more expensive and they require planning and also a lot more market research. So what's the definition of services? Services are those goods or products that cannot be inventoried. Services are uniquely identifiable to an individual, so that one service tends to be non-fungible versus another. Who in here has one person that cuts your hair and will not allow anyone else to cut your hair? Yeah, you bet. Man, when you find that one person that knows knows how to cut your hair, they're your life friend. I'll never forget when my hairstylist moved out of town. I never forgave it. Okay. Well, anyway, they got married. Anyway, so services, they cannot be inventoried. They're consumed at the moment of purchase is another way of looking at them. They are uniquely non-fungible, and they are tied to individual expertise. And so those are what services are. You can't store it, you gotta use it as you consume it, okay? Now you can purchase coupons for it, but the actual service, the actual consumption of the product, that has to be done one time and one time only. So that's how you define those in your own mind. Of durable and non-durable goods, we have one other way in terms of classifying them, and this is classifying consumer goods, and this is how you're told the difference. So marketing split from economics in 1923 because marketing was a science devoted to the provision and efficient distribution of goods and services over chosen consumer segments. And that was a field unique from economics. But the consumer goods classifications, convenience shopping, and specialty went with us and came from economics, and we still use them now. In 1975-76, we added another category called unsought goods. And so these categories have stayed fixed for now for almost 50 years or whatever. So what are these goods? The first is a convenience good. And so what is a convenience good? Usually these are goods that we purchase frequently and immediately. And usually also in the most convenient location. These goods in and of themselves are not necessarily shopping goods, mainly because the goods themselves require very little cognitive effort to make a choice. Nobody spends hours trying to figure out which candy bar to buy. You just grab and go. And that's how we do it. Now, because we do not access higher order cognitive functions when it comes to convenience goods, we use what's called the peripheral route to make choices, and what we look for is shapes and colors. So if I were at the candy aisle and I were to see the color orange, would you tell me what candy are you looking at? Reese's, yeah, it's the first thing that comes to your mind. If I were looking at a brown wrapper, what it might be? Snickers, right. It's the other reason why Musketeers changed from the white to the aluminum, quite simply, is to make it easier for them to see. And so this is why consumer goods, or convenience goods, I should say, if you notice, they have very distinct, unique colors. And that's why those goods, whenever you have them, tend to be enough that you know exactly one from the other. Yeah.
Will companies like slightly change the logo to make people think it's updated in some way?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if the ways that we can look at that, a great one to look up is the Morton Salt logo. And so it's the little girl, and she has salt, and the salt is pouring backwards, and she has an umbrella. And interesting, so like the turn of the century, one of the things about salt is that salt absorbs moisture that gets clunky. All right. So Morton salt, one of the things about it was it was basically pulverized, and when you would pour Morton salt, it wouldn't clump up. And so the phraseology is, when it rains, it pours. All right. The Morton Salt Girl has changed, I think, 7 times over the decades, and is now the same Morton Salt Girl that it's always been. So you do update logos. UPS had a flat logo at one time. If you look at the logo now, it's 3-dimensional. FedEx used to be called Federal Express, but because everybody knew it as FedEx, they actually shortened their name to that. Right, you do those things. And then you put sometimes subliminal things in them if you think they're subliminal. So if you look in the FedEx logo, if you notice between the Fed and the X, there's an arrow pointing in that direction. All right. If you look at the Wendy's, Okay, and you see the picture of Wendy's. If you look under the collar, it says mom, all right? And the reason why is because it's stuff that even mom would allow you. Okay. Convenience also, before I go on, there are also two other categories. One of those is called staples. And these are the goods that you happen to buy every day. Milk, bread, eggs, those kind of things that you buy frequently. And then others, what are known as emergency items. And once again, they fall under the most convenient location, frequently and immediately purchased. An emergency item, an example would be an umbrella, all right? Or Band-Aids. That would be another example of an emergency item. You're taking very little thought effort. You have a defined, distinct, immediate need, and you need to satisfy it. So the next is shopping goods. And these are items that have a greater uniqueness and have characteristics that encourage comparison, all right? Shopping goods encourage comparison. So not only do they encourage comparison, but the best way to actually sell shopping goods is when competitors are close to each other, not too close, but close enough. It's not a, excuse me, let me think. It's not a, just a, for no reason whatsoever that automobile dealerships are near each other. There's a reason for that. Because when automobile dealerships cluster together, it means that consumers who wish to go out and purchase automobiles have more than one place to go. And automobiles invariably cluster around each other. And if one automobile dealership moves to another location, within 10 years, they're all going to be at that same location, trust me. I've seen it happen in a lot of cities. They're out now west towards Wilkesboro. East towards Wilkesboro, but they've been in other locations. The encouragement of shopping means that you need to have to be near each other in order for overall shopping to happen. It's the reason we have malls, all right? Not internal malls, because those are crashing, but we do have shopping districts. It's because we want to be able to shop. The next item is what's called a specialty item. And these are items that have such unique brand characteristics and brand identifications that consumers will go out of their way to find. Now, specialty doesn't necessarily mean luxury, but what it means is that the item is so unique and so special that consumers will go out of their way to get it. We're lucky we have a university here. For those of you who are Apple people, you can shop any Apple product at any university from the bottom of the line all the way up. If you're not in a university, well, then you have to go to the closest location of a true Apple store. And that can be for a distance. So, I mean, that is an example of a specialty item. Now, what Apple did in the mid 2010s is they started to release their products to places such as Walmart, but you won't go to Walmart to find the top of the line Apple products. You go there to find what they call their FMCG, their fast moving consumer goods, which are the iPads and the iPhones and the iWatches. Okay, so specialties. The last is what's known as an unsought good. These are goods that the consumer may not know about or normally think about, but they need. Smoke detectors, life insurance, cemetery plots, gravestones. These are goods that are unsought, but ultimately we may find one way or another question that we need them. So my mother lost everything in Katrina in 2004. And she got insurance money settlement, and then she got some other money from the state. So I guess in about 2006, she called me and she said, honey, I want you to know I've made all my funeral arrangements. Everything's taken care of. We're from Long Beach, Mississippi, which is on the Gulf Coast. We grew up 2 blocks from the beach. I'm a beach guy. And she said, don't worry about it. I have everything taken care of. And I said, well, that's good, Mom. And she said, oh, and I bought a plot for you, and I bought a plot for Lynn, and a plot for Jewel, my sister. And my first thought was to say, no, but you know what? I thought to myself, that gave her a great deal of comfort, knowing that I had a place to go. And who am I to say that I'm not eventually here? My wife is going to cremate, so I might eventually go there. So what do I say? You say what you always say. Thanks, Mom. I appreciate the cemetery. Okay. So anyway, one way or another, we're going to be there eventually. Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly where it is. Yep. It's a 4x4 area for all of us together. If we want one big headstone, we can do it that way. And now my sister is arguing, she wants to choose the headstone. I'm like, forget it. There's too many things to worry about in life. I'm not going to worry about a headstone, Put me in a cup and bury me. I don't care. All right, so consumer goods classifications. We're not going to worry about industrial goods classifications, so you can skip that. The next things we're going to talk about is how do we find ways to make our products unique and different, both the product and the service themselves. And so I'm not going to go over a lot of these things. Some of them are quite obvious. But the two things that I do want you to know about is the concept of conformance quality, and the other is performance quality. So when we talked about the hotel, or if we talk about any particular, especially big ticket items, we have an expectation that there should be satisfaction in the items that we have. So I wanted my car to start. The expectation was my car was going to start. I wanted my tires to not be flat, all right? That is what's known as conformance quality. There's the minimum expectations that if I buy in this product category, then I'm going to achieve these particular items. In essence, when you get a cell phone, you expect now to be able to do all of the things that we listed on Tuesday. All of those are what's the expectations of conformance quality. Performance quality is basically whether you meet or exceed your expectations in terms of other unique aspects. And so what do I mean? So I wanted cruise control. Everybody wants cruise control in their car. I got one, but I have what's called dynamic cruise control. Does anybody know what that is, by the way? I'm sure you all do. Yeah. I'm way behind. Dynamic cruise control, you can set it and it'll make sure that the car in front of you never gets closer than a certain number of car lengths, okay? So the first time I had this, I had a car actually slowing down in front of me, and I mean, when it drops the anchor, it drops the anchor, okay? And what I've found is that I can concentrate much longer on the road because I can concentrate where everything's going and be assured my car is going to slow down if I miss something. One time, the car in front of me was stopped and my car dropped the anchor. And I mean, it's ABS, there's no, screeching of the brakes. And I spared no expense on Michelin's, but man, my thought was, who's going to hit me from behind? Okay. So that's an example of conformance and performance quality. So in services, there are many different things that usually wrapped around individuals and the way that we wish to treat our customers. One of the big things about channels is the need and the desire to remove as many barriers in front of the consumer from the use and purchase of their goods. And so this is, if you notice, these are things that have to do with that. Ordering ease, delivery, installation, training, consulting, repair, returns. These are all things that if you are producing a good that is very similar to other goods, these are the ways that you can make your corporation unique and special. If you make it easy to return. I will say this about, I mean, I go back and forth in Walmart of good things and bad things, but I think they have the best return policy I've ever seen. Not only that, but Walmart will ask you whether you want that back on your credit card or whether you want cash money. And I think that's smart. To put cash in someone's hand is really a great idea. So it meant that if they bought that good, let's say for a Christmas item, instead of having that particular item, you could go to Walmart and get cash for it. That's just smart, okay? So, not a lot has ever been discussed on design, but design may be the one thing that allows companies and corporations to exceed beyond all expectations or to die. The feel, the function to a consumer is something so intimate to them that they will refuse any product other than the one you're giving them. So if you're one of those who spent $30 for iPad earbuds, you accept that and you have no problem with it whatsoever. And if you're one of those poor people, when you got the iPhone, you look up online, try to drill a hole for the earphones, I'm sorry. It's just the way that they designed them. So I wanted to show you this because I always find this interesting to me. So design is such a unique thing. So here we have examples of good design and bad design. All right. So I'm sure, can anybody name me what these cars are?
The bottom left of Pontiac has tech.
Isn't that amazing? You know that one? That's 20 years ago. And yet the design is so bad that everybody knows it. And what's the main thing that this thing did to Pontiac?
It's also, I think, memorable for a lot of people because that's Walter White's car.
Breaking Bad, yeah. That's also true. So what is unique about that besides being on Breaking Bad? What did it do? It crashed Pontiac. Pontiac went out of business because of this one car, all right? That the design at that moment was so bad that so many people so disliked it that it drove them away from Pontiac forever. Can anybody name me what that is? It's a GTO, all right? A friend of mine had that, man. You could sleep 6 people in that. It was so wide. It was amazing. 427 V8, Holly 4-valve 7500. Guess who designed that? Pontiac, exactly, same company, same company. Can anybody tell me what that is? No, I wouldn't think so.
Tornado?
No, but you're close. The Tornado is, I think, what you're thinking of. That is the Edsel, all right? The Edsel 1959, named after the son of Henry Ford. And it was not necessarily a bad car in terms of function, but as designed, it was a sheer disaster, all right? Now, what is that? Pardon? Mustang. And who designed that? Ford, same company. And what am I trying, or what's the point I'm trying to make? Well, the point I'm trying to make with this is that we can all make good decisions and bad decisions within the same corporation about design. And who can tell me truthfully what a good design or a bad design is? The only one who can really tell you is the consumers. And yet there's this love-hate relationship we have with the consumers. Steve Jobs used to call it constructive destruction, all right? In that we bring on innovation, sometimes kicking and dragging with the consumers at the same time, because that's the way it is, all right? And so this is kind of like wraps it all up into a neat bow, is that design many times, there's no way of understanding exactly what you're doing. You hope to make a beautiful product, but ultimately it's the consumer who makes the choices whether they're good or not. Interesting story about the Mustang. The Mustang was supposed to be what was known as the third car. So in the 50s in the United States, you had one car families. And you had a rise of the middle class during the 50s, and you started to have a two-car family, which meant that the husband and the wife had a car, and then the teenagers would basically share which one of those cars. Well, in the 60s, you started to see the advent of the three-car family. And the three-car family meant that the third car was for the kids, whoever they would be, and they would use that. So in 62, 63, Lee Iacocca and John DeLorean, came up with a new design of a small automobile called the Ford Mustang. And so they gave it the idea that Mustang was like being free and running. It was a small car. They had them in a 6-cylinder and a 4-cylinder model. And they tended to be, like I said, smaller for kids. And they became wildly successful. But here's the thing, the major market for the car, or let's just say 2/3 of the individuals who bought them were men between the ages of 35 and 50 who were making anywhere from $45,000 to $80,000 a year. It totally missed the market that they thought the design would appeal to, and went right at a particular group that they never expected. And you know what was one of the number one things? Fuel economy. It got 28 miles to the gallon in the mid-60s before the 6-cylinder engines. And it became a great little commuter car and a good car to tool around on the weekends. Once again, sometimes we design things, and this is another way to think about it. Companies design things, consumers use them. And the consumers are the ones that determine success or failure. You can't say it's your fault, consumers, you didn't like my stuff. Okay. So design. So what are the parts about design? Generally, a good design, it captures an emotion. It looks fast, standing still. That's another way of thinking of it. You can look at the design and know exactly whether that item is an apple or not, okay? Even without the logo, you would probably know, all right? There's no comparison. Because durable goods basically last beyond one cycle, what you want to be able to do is make that experience rewarding again and again and again. I love my Toyota Highlander, I'm telling you folks. I mean, I bought it in 2017, I bought it for $24,000 2 years ago. It's worth $29,000. You know, I mean, and that's what the used car market is happening right now. And we were using small SUVs in Iceland and in Stockholm, and we have no way, we can't pack efficiently with a darn. We had 4 giant suitcases, and we had to put one in the middle seat between our 2 girls. And when I came home, I just threw them all in the Highlander and filled it up. And I mean, I had room to see, and I thought, man, that's my car, all right? It can transform the entire enterprise. What Mustang did was create a revolution. It helps manufacturing and distribution, and it can take on, you can have various approaches. So from the Mustang, you had the Mustang 2, you had the Mustang GT, the Mustang Cobra. You had so many different variations and permutations from the Mustang that it created an entire genre of what we call pony cars, all right? And pony cars with the Camaros and that one, and the GTOs and all of those cars that just burn rubber, all right? And so that's what design does. Now, I don't want to leave out luxury brands when I talked about specialty goods, but luxury brands carry something that is much different than a specialty item in and of itself. Because luxury brands do not necessarily have to be complex. But luxury brands carry with them a heritage that is unique and special. So you find that not only quality is in there, but the uniqueness and the craftsmanship and the heritage. So when I became a PhD student, my professor is a wine snob or an expert. So in order for me to get my PhD and for him to chair the dissertation, I had to become a wine snob or an expert, whatever you call it. Not that I had to, no, I had to. So anyway, I've become appreciative of wines, but I also become appreciative of whiskeys, all right? And so, yeah, one thing leads to another, one trump. Anyway, I enjoy Irish whiskeys. Everybody's got their favorite. Irish whiskeys are triple filtered, which means they go through a 3 filtering process. Usually they're also stored in unique, distinct barrels. And Irish whiskey is made to be drank with nothing else. All right, water, ice, and just take it as a shot. And it is extremely smooth. Now, there are other individuals who like other whiskeys who don't like Irish whiskeys because they say that's part of the bite. They want to have that bite when they have that taste. And that would be an example. And Jameson is my favorite. The 18 years, my favorite. And it has all of these things. It has a history of how it was created, an authenticity and a heritage. And that would be an example of a luxury brand that you're willing to go out of your way to be willing to get. And so any one of those, you can try to assign the air of luxury, but we all know what's luxury and what isn't. All right. And that's one of the issues. We all know what it is and what it isn't. So let's see, I think I can finish this. We can finish this without taking the break, and we can be gone before 1. Let's do this. Let's talk about mixes with length, depth, and consistency. And if you'll give me a second, let me images. So product mix. This is what I was looking for. Okay, so remember I talked about the product mix. Now, Oxidol is listed here for Procter & Gamble, but it no longer is in there, okay? So these are the laundry detergents that Procter & Gamble has, okay? Corporations very many times try to keep goods, try to keep goods that are consistent together. So,
I just thought you picked the most boring one.
boring slide? Which one do you want?
I think
Boring's good.
the one with like the web staying out.
That one?
Left. No.
Oh, that one?
Down and to the left.
Down to the left.
Up.
That one.
One more.
That
up.
one.
There you go.
Okay, there you go. Whatever makes you happy, okay? I deliver, okay? So that's it. So that gives you an idea of the product P&G mix, okay? So all of the goods together are the product mixes of all of the things that they put together, all right? Now, the mix is the totality of all of the items that is in the categories of a given group. Now, let me also say this. As I said before, Procter & Gamble, or most corporations, generally focus on similar items. And so Procter & Gamble focuses on the realm fast-moving consumer goods. That tends to be where they go. Now, the fascinating thing about them is every once in a while, they'll take a dive into something that I think is kind of, I wouldn't say crazy, but it's just kind of, you know, it's something you don't think of. So Procter & Gamble has gotten into car washes, believe it or not. And they're doing it, and you think, you say, well, yeah, they're just washing, but it's totally not, nothing that's in their mix, but they do it anyway. So if you look at it, the entire, this is also known as the product assortment, the entire group of it is called the product mix, all right? So the length is basically the total number of different items or different product categories. Liquid detergent, detergent additives. What would you call that? Medications, toothpaste. Yeah, all of those, that would be considered the length. The depth is how many different items it has in each individual product category. And although it seems strange that you would find a reason to have nine different laundry detergents, the fact is that every one of those has a particular consumer group that likes them, all right? So Ivory, for those of you who might be sensitive to some of the things that come in detergents, Gain, of course, made their mark with liquid detergents. Tide has been around forever. Bounce is an additive that you use in the drying process. And the interesting thing is that you'll see some things like Febreze mixed with these things as well. And that's what you call co-branding. So that's how things are. So the product mix basically has to do with whenever a corporation feels that they have a given category that they feel is underserviced, they're not being maximized, all right? Generally should function in a compatible manner. But hopefully what you have is that all of the items can share things such as the same channels of distribution. So if you notice, even these particular items together, you would expect them to even find them on the same shelves. It's practical that you could box them together on a single skid and they would all go to the same location. Now, one of the difficult things that can happen, especially, and you find this in many product categories, but especially in complex durable goods, is when you're trying to come out with many different variants of the same product. One of the difficulties that happens when you try to come out with either a premium item or an economy item is the potential for eroding the brand loyalty if you come out with a good that does not meet the expectations of its loyal customers. And so you'll never see Apple come out with a brand that is in any way inferior to anything that it sells now. Because the brand characteristic is so unique and special that to exceed that, or excuse me, not to meet that, is to create or invite disaster on the brand. So an example, Toyota, for those of you who are Toyota fans, me included, if I were to say one thing about a Toyota brand that you might want to consider is not necessarily luxury, but efficiency. I look at Toyota and Honda very much in the same way, is that they have finely placed machines that do excellent work without a doubt. Now, the problem with Toyota, however, is that Toyota felt that they were losing sales to the luxury brand markets that were being put there by Cadillac and other automobiles out there as well. And so what they wanted to do is do what's called an upmarket stretch. They wanted to create a higher premium quality vehicle. But the difficulty was is they were afraid of eroding the brand as they had it now. The Toyota brand. So they made Lexus. That's it. That's where I was going. That's why Lexus came around. Lexus was there so that Toyota could introduce a luxury brand without eroding or changing the brand promise that Toyota had originally. Very good, exactly. Lexus had a great start. I don't know if they do this anymore. Lexus guaranteed you when you bought a Lexus, you would get the first, how did it go? You would get the first 3 years of oil changes free, or the first 36,000 miles, okay? So every 3 months or every 3,000 miles, you could come in and get your oil change for free. So how much does it cost in parts to change your oil? Parts? Maybe, yeah. Yeah, you know, oil, you're talking about usually 5 quarts. You know, just think about it, you know, even now, when you think of the synthesized oil, you know, even that now is 20 bucks, maybe the filters maybe 5. But look at what Lexus did in terms of brand loyalty to the consumers. I mean, it gave them an unparalleled way of being able to connect to their customers. And look what Toyota got or Lexus got in return. When they first came out with the Lexus vehicles, whenever they would come in for their free oil changes, they would hook them into their systems, run the diagnostics, and if something was failing, they would send that information upstream to Toyota corporate, and they were able to manage their consumers' vehicles for the first 2 years. It was genius, all right? Because everything that they gave up free, they got back in terms of a brand recognition. And that is an idea, all right? And it worked. Now, a downward stretch is when you're trying to create another vehicle, generally in a more economical term, in which you're willing to remove some of the features or conformance quality that there is in the expectation of that brand. I'm trying to remember, was it Scion that Toyota had? I can't remember. But Scion, I think it was the downward stretch of Toyota, where they came up with a different brand, different vibe. And once again, they're out of business, if I'm not mistaken. Toyota absorbed them back into the system, but Toyota, the brand itself, wasn't hurt. And so that is a good way to do it. And so what they were doing was, when you're doing a down stretch and an up stretch, let's call it a two-way stretch, okay? So you're creating items on both sides, and what effectively are you doing is that you're filling those lines, okay? Now, modernization, I think you could also call it planned obsolescence if you wanted to. But basically what it means is that your cars are keeping up with what consumers demand. So we got a Kia Sportage, a plug-in hybrid, when we were in Stockholm. And it had, its entire panel, by the way, was a touchscreen. All right, it was that big from the gauges all the way to the other side. And what was interesting about it as well is the backup cameras, it took me a while to figure this out. Not only did it do a backup, but it had this view where you could actually see a view from above your car and see everything around the car itself. And the way I figured it out is that there was a CGM, a computer generated model that has the cameras out the side windows and the rear view mirrors, and it's kind of putting that together to a composite. And I was just stunned. I mean, I've never, ever seen anything like that. I got used to it. But those are examples. Product lines need to feature items. Eventually, what you'll need to do is change those items, remove things from them, add things from them. The line length of any product is constantly changing and being added to and being subtracted to. There are models that have come on and off for decades, back and forth. And that is in its nature a good thing, because eventually consumers come back around and get the things they want. And what also happens is consumers many times will like an item or model and then go out of style. So the only part on this I want to talk about is in the mixed pricing is a couple of things that have to do with the bundling and with the captive pricing as well. So captive pricing means that you have one particular item, which is an individual product, but in order to be able to use that product, you need to sign a long-term contract in order to be able to use it. So the example, of course, is cell phones, all right? Bundling of products is where you have options in the system, and what you do is you put together those features of characteristics that the consumers most desire, and that ultimately provides a vehicle that people really desire. So like Toyota, I have the XLE model. And the XLE model is kind of unique because Toyota was looking at, I think there were 16 different items of things that consumers wanted most when they were looking at options. And you find that in brands that do limited, or you'll see it say SE, Sport Edition, or LE, Luxury Edition, or Limited, or any of those others, they tend to be bundled units so that instead of having to create a custom vehicle, they're all bundled together in the same kind of concept. So whether I want it or not, because of the ridiculous amount of money I spent on my cell phone, I've got HBO Max for free, okay? I wasn't born at night. So anyway, so those I think are the ones that I wanted to say. It's basically what it means is this, is that you try to build your products together to maximize your mix and ultimately maximize the profits and satisfaction for the consumers. Oh yeah, I have to talk about co-branding. All right. So if you remember on that last screen, we had Febreze. And if you notice, or if you go into the store, if you look under laundry detergents, you'll many times find Cheer with Febreze. All right. This is an example of what's known as co-branding. And so co-branding are when two well-known brands are combined together to create a joint profit that are marketed together in some kind of fashion. Now they can be the same company. They can also be a joint venture, which is very unique. They can be recognized as a product made by two corporations coming together, but they might even brand them differently. So in the 90s, GM and Toyota came together to build a factory in California. And they created a single product, the Toyota Corona, which was also the Chevy Nova. It was bolt for bolt the exact same car. And they sold them under two different brands. Now, the Corona outsold the Nova 3-1, but they were the same car. And then, of course, you can have multiple sponsors of a given event. And then finally, you can see that also in retail outlets as well. Co-branding is when you have two or more items. Now, those two or more items have to be consistent with each other. Otherwise, you get some kind of difficulties in coming up with a saleable kind of advertising. Jenny Craig co-branded with Godiva chocolates, and it didn't work well, okay, on either side, all right? And it's quite obvious why. The brands need to have some kind of consistency together. Now, what you do find sometimes is ingredient branding that is an ingredient inside of it, of an item that is contained within other branded items. And so what do I mean? In the 80s and the 90s, Intel found themselves with some very heavy competition. There was Advanced Marker Devices, AMD is still around. Citrix Winframe is out there as well. There are multiple creators of processors. I remember you could buy what was called the V20 chip that was plug for plug, the exact same plug of an 8088 processor. You could plug the V20 chip in and it would run 40% faster. So what Intel did was they started this campaign called Intel Inside. And they came up with this little jingle, ding, 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 like that. And they would say, insist on your computer having Intel products. And they had like the little logo on it as well. And this co-branding meant also that creators of desktop PCs and laptops who used the Intel brand were able to piggyback on the advertising that Intel was doing at the same time. It was a win-win situation for them. Intel still rolls on. They're still, doing as well as all of that. AMD was very clever. AMD bought NVIDIA. I don't know if you're into the gaming stuff or anything, but when AMD bought NVIDIA, what they did was they built the graphics chip native inside the CPU processor as well. And that was both inexpensive and it was powerful. I mean, because NVIDIA really had the best of the 3DFX at one time. Okay. Last, to talk about packaging very briefly. Packaging, you must understand, packaging is a marketing tool. The way you package an item, it also is an advertisement for the product. So if I'm even going to look at something as simple as this, okay, this hand sanitizer, this package is an advertisement, all right? There's no question why it is the color that it is. It could be practically any color that it wanted to be. But all of the blues and the greens are meant to be relaxing and appealing, okay? All of the brand designations here, of course, the drug facts, they've got to put that in. But all of this is a product that is meant to sell, all right? Same here, same thing, okay? All of this is meant to have a purpose. To identify the brand, to make descriptive or persuasive information. It can also be used as a tool to tell you how to use it as well. It is not for any reason whatsoever that when you buy a food product with a can, you're going to find, or a box, it's going to have a recipe on it. Why? Because they want to be able to give you practical uses for that as well. And that's where the aid of the product consumption comes in. Has anyone had shelf-stable milk.
You mean like the powder?
No, I mean the liquid. In Europe, you can buy shelf-stable milk. It is what's known as ultra-pasteurized, all right? And so it will stay stable on the shelf up to 6 months. You can refrigerate it. You don't have to. Tastes weird. All of those things, but yes, it is shelf stable. And it's built so that it can be efficiently stacked in different places. And the packaging on it basically says, yes, you can drink it, all right? So, I mean, it is one of those, unique things that certainly is culturally difficult for us to think of, because how many years have we been taught that if you drink warm milk, it's going to make you sick, okay? I'll go even further in this. Raw meat in Europe, I can't stand raw meat. I can't take the way the texture is, all right? And they eat it around me. I'm like, okay. So anyway, the last thing I want to wrap up also is just to realize is that the packages on themselves must be truthful. They have to be with sincerity and honest and sincere. It can promote the product, but it cannot bring some kind of expectation that they can't live up to. I saw something, what was it in, no, it was in Stockholm. And it was a beer. And I thought, oh man, way to stand up very, somewhat. It said, probably the best beer in the world. And I went, you're not really saying anything, are you? I mean, it's kind of a little probably, So when it comes to labeling, all right, make sure you make a statement, okay? So the one thing that you hope for is that the label itself or the product in the package brings some kind of promise of satisfaction. Okay, we ran through that pretty quick. We are done for the day. So I'm going to start doing some of the grading that I've been backed up on. I spent most of the morning doing that. Hopefully by the end of the week, you'll be caught up. I'll start putting the videos online. I haven't had a chance to do those yet, but we're done and go have a good day.